The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Rob Deininger, and I'm here with Jack Degraw. And as always, we're talking Yankees baseball. How you doing, Jack?
Good. How are you today, Robert?
Not too bad. We've gotten past the All-Star break, a mini All-Star break. Yankees will start a 4-game series with Boston starting Thursday, and eight of the next 11 games are against Boston, followed by 3 with Tampa Bay. So the next 2 weeks is extremely crucial for the Yankees. I mean, if they don't make ground and Boston has their way with them, it could probably put a death nail in the Yankee season. They'll probably be trying to, get a wild card, hoping to get a wild card if things go bad in the next 2 weeks.
Well, I think another thing, Robert, if say they lose 9 or 10 out of 14 games or something, I mean, they might have to start moving some guys at the All-Star break. Or maybe somebody like Chapman or Voit or guys like that. Yeah,
because Chapman all of a sudden can't find the strike zone. I mean, Boone wouldn't use him in the Seattle series or the Houston series for fear that he might blow the game for him. And their starting pitching's been a little thin. I'm kind of worried with the pitching. Pitching was what was keeping us in games for the first half of the season, and it's starting to take a toll on the pitching staff the more games we get into the year.
Yeah, I mean, Chapman has always had problems, for a couple of weeks, but now for the previous seasons he's had, trouble locating his fastball, and then he starts throwing his slider and he gets lit up. But, I mean, this has lasted over a month.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, if he can't close games, I mean, I don't know what you're going to do. And, I mean, they've had so many injuries because the pitchers they got in the offseason had a lot of injuries. And them not playing a lot of games last year, I mean, I'm not surprised there's not more injuries with pitchers in baseball.
Yeah. I mean, I'm bringing up Chapman's stats. For the his last 8 games, he's got a 14.21 ERA. And in six and a third innings, he's given up 10 runs, all earned, and he's just getting lit up. He's given up 11. What is it? 2. Yeah, he's just 10 runs in 6 innings. His ERA's ballooned over 14. I mean, if they can't get him straight, it's gonna be hard, especially with their starting pitching as thin as it is right now.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed when he comes in and when he's not pitching well, of course he can't find home plate, and then he relies on his slider, and his fastball, instead of being 100, 102 or something, it's like in the mid 90s or 98, and then he throws his slider and he gets lit up. I mean, it's just I don't know if he don't get straightened out. I mean, you can just forget the season.
Yeah, I mean, Cole pitched. He pitched a great game against Houston. He threw a career high 123 pitches. I think Boone wanted to take him out in the 9th, and you could see how animated Cole got. He wanted to finish that game, but Cole since June, his last 8, 9, 10 starts, he's been about a 500 pitcher. He'll have a great game followed by a game where he gets touched up a little bit, and then behind him, I mean, Domingo Germán has struggled. Jordan Montgomery hasn't been the kind of pitcher I thought he'd be this year, even though the Yankees are, I think, 11-4 or 11-5 in games he started, but he's 3-4 on the year. And Jameson Taylor, he's pitched well his last couple of outings, but he's struggled this year. I mean, the pitching is worried me a little bit. I mean, Jonathan Loaiza's hurt right now. Britton still is hurt. The pitching has me a little worried.
Yeah, I mean, Montgomery only threw like 44 innings last year, and he's coming off the Tommy John, so you don't know when he's going to break down. And Telion has looked good the last 3 or 4 outings.
Yeah.
And, there's nobody really right now you can count on. Cole figured it out. I mean, he pitched incredible Saturday night. And, I mean, the Yankees win the first 2 games against the Astros. And, then that debacle on Sunday, it's like, I don't know. Even when they win 2 out of 3, it feels like they got swept.
Yeah, Jameson Taylor, his last 5 starts, he's 3-0 with a 3.38 ERA, which, is a lot better than what how he looked at, the first half of the season. He struggled a lot, but his last 5 outings, he's looked really good.
Well, one of the things is I think he was working with Cole a little bit.
Yeah.
They were teammates with the Pirates, and, Cole was helping him out a little bit.
And also Corey Kluber, the trainer, said he's hopeful that Kluber will pitch again this year. And that, caught my attention. And Cashman says that they hope to have him back by September. And with the way the Yankees have been recently, how secretive they are of injuries and how they don't tell the seriousness of the injury, I wonder if Kluber is a little bit more hurt than we previously thought.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking in spring training, Robert, about Kluber. I mean, he's a great pitcher when he's on, but he only threw like an inning last year.
Yeah.
And, I mean, are you really going to depend on a guy like that to come in and throw like 175 innings and win 15 games? I think it was just a pipe dream. And, I mean, like you were saying, the injury is probably a lot worse than they're letting on, and the only way he'll come back in September if they have a chance to, get a wild card spot.
Yeah, and Severino, they expect to start throwing to live hitters sometime this week, I think. But let's say you do get Sevy back, and let's say Kluber does come back in September. Are these guys going to be strong enough to help in a playoff run? I don't know if they'll have the arm strength with the lack of innings. I mean, Severino hasn't pitched in a few years, and Kluber, the same thing. He's only pitched a couple innings the last few years, minus the start this year.
Well, that's the same thing with Telion, and I'm not pronouncing his name right. and
I know, I get it wrong all the time.
Yeah, and Montgomery, I mean, are these guys going to be strong enough, to even just get through the season? And then you got Devi Garcia in the minors, and he's struggling in AAA. And, Michael King has been a disappointment. And who's the other pitcher? Clark Schmidt. You don't know about him. So there's a lot of question marks.
Yeah, I mean, Devi Garcia, I was surprised. I thought he'd be a guy we would see early in the year and throughout the year, and he's really taken a step back. I think, though, in his last outing, he pitched 5 shutout innings. He did give up 5 walks, but they say it's more of a mechanical issue than anything else. So, I mean, hopefully he can get back on track, but I really thought he would be someone that we'd be talking about this year on the major league level.
Yeah, I thought he'd play a part in with the big team this year, and he still might, because they might be forced just to bring him up because they don't have other options.
Yeah, and Clark Schmidt was another guy I thought. I mean, I remember in spring training it was just his arm. It was no big deal, and he hasn't even started pitching yet, right? To live, in games. No,
the last I heard, he was just playing catch.
It's amazing, and I mean, yeah, and you got to wonder. I mean, if the Yankees, if things go south on them in these next 11 11 to 15 games, you got to wonder if Cashman is going to be a seller at the trade deadline, or he won't bother making any moves. I mean, if no hope of making the postseason, do you really make a deal for somebody?
Yeah, and if they trade anybody, Robert, I mean, teams are going to want value. And right now, a lot of the Yankee players are underperforming. And, I mean, who can you really trade? I think teams would want Chapman because they could, because he's been a great reliever throughout his career. And, Voit has some value, and Ursula, and, but, who are you going to trade? I mean, teams are going to want value. They're not going to just take guys who are struggling. Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious to see how the Yankees do against Boston. I mean, those 8 games. I mean, they're 8 games behind Boston. If they can pick up at least 3 games, it'll be a positive for them. And then who knows what happens. I mean, I think if things go the Yankees' way and Cashman makes a move at the deadline, I think he might have to acquire another starter, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, lately, Robert, the last month they've blown like 4 or 5 games in the 9th inning.
Yeah.
So you add 3 or 4 wins to their total, they'd be right in the mix. But the offense for the most part, the last month, 6 weeks have been scoring runs, but the pitching has just been, it's been abysmal.
Yeah, and one of the things that surprised me with the Yankees is that they're only 1 game above 500 at home. I mean, if you look at the teams that are leading are leading the division or fighting for the division lead, they play extremely well at home. I mean, like Boston, they're 20-19. The White Sox 31-14. The Astros 29-19. The Yankees, they're 23-22 at home, and they're just 2 games over 500 on the road.
Yeah, I mean, usually if you've got a good team, you want to win at least 50 games at home.
Yeah.
And they haven't played well at Yankee Stadium, and they've played terrible on the weekends. So.
Yeah. And is Andahar hurt?
No, he just hasn't played, Robert. Like we discussed so many times, the Yankees aren't just high on Andujar.
Yeah, no.
I hope they just trade him and, put him out of his misery.
Yeah, I mean, they do have pieces, but, like Frazier, Andujar, I mean, they haven't produced or met their expectations, and the trade value for them is not going to be high. I mean, you would have to put together a large package of some of these guys just to get something in return.
Yeah, I mean, Frazier now has got that vertigo, and anybody who's ever had ear problems, you can't do much anything. It's like you just get dizzy spells, and you're off balance. I mean, I don't even know how a guy could play baseball with those kind of injuries. I remember Lou Piniella had it many years ago, and Lou was an excellent hitter, and I remember he hit 196 that year with no home runs. So I mean, Frazier's value now is, non-existent pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, Yankees lineup, I mean, it's so hit and miss. I mean, they rely so much on the home run. You see when they hit home runs, they can score. They can put up a lot of runs. But when they're not hitting home runs, they struggle scoring. I mean, in the last 22 games, Gary Sanchez has hit 7 home runs, but he's batting .213. Judge batting .266. Urshela's batting .296. LeMahieu's batting .292. There's some guys that are starting to heat up, like Urshela and LeMahieu. And Judge has pretty much been consistent all year, but Gary had that hot streak, and he's starting to cool off a little bit. It's going to be interesting to see what the Yankees do. I mean, if they don't plan on re-signing him, do they trade him at the deadline? That's something I'm interested to see, because I think if they don't trade him, I think they might look to re-sign him then.
Yeah, I mean, the one of the big problems is, I mean, they don't get any hits with men on base. I mean, I think Sunday they left like 27 men on base.
Yeah.
I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. They've done that a couple times this year where they've left 20 or more runners on base. It's incredible.
I mean, they might be the last in baseball with, hitting with men on base with 2 outs. I mean, they very rarely get like a clutch hit.
Yeah.
And, that's because you got guys who just swing for the fences all the time. And, that's the way the game's played now.
I was pulling up to see who the Yankees pitchers are going to be in the Boston series, but they don't have them posted. Yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah, I think Cole is supposed to pitch Saturday night. Boy, what a terrific game he pitched on Saturday against the Astros. I mean, that was just like – that was the kind of win that could turn the season around. And then you had what happened Sunday, but Judge hitting the home run and then grabbing his jersey and Altuve just he's got the Yankees number. I mean, the Astros have played great. The Red Sox have too, and the Rays, and that's the 3 teams they can't get past.
Yeah, I mean, Cole though. I mean, he that was a gutsy performance. I mean, he threw a career high 123 pitches, and I loved it when Boone came out after he got the first out in the bottom of the 9th. And you could tell Cole was not coming out of the game. He was yelling, and you couldn't make it out what he was saying, but he was telling Boone, "There's no effing way you're taking me out of this game." And I wish, some of the other players were like that when they sit Aaron Judge. I wish Judge would demand to be played. I hate when a guy's hitting well, and all of a sudden he has a day off, and they tell her, it's a scheduled day off. I wish more guys would be like Cole and be like, no, I'm playing today.
Yeah, I mean, if you're facing a top player or a top pitcher or a top team, you should want to be in the lineup. I'm not saying they don't want to be. It's not their decision. But they could say, no, I want to play today. And that's why you love Cole, like what he did Saturday night. It's like, you love that bulldog attitude. I mean, that's the kind of guys that are, you're going to win with.
Yeah. Yep. And, I keep saying it, but these next 2 weeks, with the 8 games versus Boston and then 3 with Tampa, could dictate what could happen the rest of the season with the Yankees. If they have a bad 2 weeks, it could send them in a tailspin. We'll definitely find out what kind of team we got this year.
Well, if they win their 6 or 7 games, there's still some hope. But if they win 3 or 4 games, I mean, Robert, I just don't think they're good enough.
Yeah.
To win 90 games. They might stay in contention for a second playoff spot. They'll always be like 4 or 5, 6 games around behind, and you think, okay, maybe we get in the playoffs, we'll win 8 out of 10. But this team needs help, and hopefully, in the off season, that they'll reconstruct the team, Cashman and Hal, and get this on the right track, because a lot of these guys have regressed big time. Yeah.
That's like 12. Like I said, 12 of the next 14 games are against Boston and Tampa. But after that, they play 3 against Miami, 3 against Baltimore, 4 against Seattle, and 3. I mean, their schedule gets easy after these next 2 weeks. It gets easy, but I mean, they could dig themselves a hole if they don't play well these next 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the season. If they don't have a winning series, by August 1st, it might be the best thing in the long run, because they'll be forced to change, to revamp the roster, because a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, when they, the Astros, they went to Game 7. They missed the series by one game. This was an up-and-coming team.
Yeah.
They were strong up the middle. You had Sanchez, an all-star. You had Torres, and Didi was outstanding. And Hicks, would play his part. If Hicks hits these 20 homers, knocks in 70 runs, plays good defense, he's an addition. But look where they are now.
Yeah, and you got to wonder if Houston wasn't cheating, do the Yankees win 2 titles? And you got to wonder now if maybe that window that they had there for 3-4 years is closed, and it's time to shake up the roster a little bit. Yeah,
because when the Yankees couldn't win in Houston, I think in those 2 playoffs they were like 1-5, and they just couldn't win in Houston. I mean, I feel the Yankees had the players that were good enough to get to the World Series. And these guys just, they didn't produce in the big series.
No.
And, all the great players the Yankees have had throughout their fabulous history, these guys became legends because they produced in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And you don't get any big hits or big pitching performances. They just always fall a little short.
Yeah, that's like I remember the Yankees. I remember that series against the Mets in the World Series and the game-winning home runs. I remember Tino Martinez and another one in the playoffs hitting a home run. I mean, they had guys during the '90s that were just clutch performers in the big games. And you haven't had a lot of those lately. Those
you got guys. Yeah, like Jose Vizcaíno would come up big with the Yankees. Luis Sojo would come up big.
Yeah.
Brian.
Yeah.
Bucky Dent.
Yeah.
Mariano Duncan, and they would come up with big hits, and this team just doesn't do it.
Yeah, and their bench, they don't have anyone on there that can bring off their bench that causes a matchup problem for pitchers. I mean, they're so right-handed heavy. I mean, going back to the 90s, they had players like Darryl Strawberry that can bring off a bench, or a Cecil Fielder or a Jose Canseco. It causes a manager to, think twice about bringing in a certain pitcher when you got someone on the bench they can bring in that could hurt you.
Yeah, I mean, the problems they've had all season, they usually don't show up until the playoffs. But now when they're not, hitting home runs and the pitching has been struggling, the defense has been struggling. I mean, they're 46-43, and with the way they perform, that's where they should be.
Yeah.
That's the kind of team that they are. I mean, it's like a lot of their shortcomings were, when you hit home runs against weaker teams, and you beat the weak teams, you own Baltimore, and, Toronto was bad for a couple. When you beat those teams consistently, that like a lot of times it makes you better than you actually are. And, this year, it's tough to watch is what it is.
Yeah. Well, even David Cohn said it, going back to last year and counting the games this year, it's a large enough sample size. The Yankees are basically a 500 team. They're an average team at best.
Yeah, I mean, the last 130 games, I think if you looked at their record, they'd have 64, 65, 66 wins. So this is not like this is not just a slump.
No. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I'm rooting for them, but like I said, I just can't. Even if they do manage to make the postseason, they're just not built to win in the postseason. No,
I mean, even if you get in, it's one game.
Yeah. And Jason Dominguez, the Martian, they call him, finally played his first game in, was it low A ball? And
the Tampa Tarpons, yeah.
Yeah, and he went 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. He had a single and a double. He did get thrown out trying to stretch the single into a double, but he got his first 2 professional hits and drove in a couple of runs. So it's a nice start, a nice first game for him.
Yeah, that's nice to see because he was in the complex league, the old Gulf Coast League, and he wasn't getting any pitches to hit. And I'm supposed to go to tomorrow, Robert, and see him play, so I'll post some pictures on my Facebook.
Oh, that'd be great. I mean, the kid's only 18, and he's built like a major leaguer. I can only imagine what he's going to look like as he gets older and fills out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him. And another thing, Robert, they promoted Anthony Volpe from Del Barton High School in New Jersey. He went up to Hudson Valley.
Oh,
and
really?
I seen that kid play 3 games, and he hit 4 homers, and he had like 10 RBIs. The Yankees got a lot of guys who can hit in low A. I mean, they had one game they scored 26 runs. I seen a game last week over in Dunedin. They scored 21 runs. They had 24 hits in 7 innings. They got guys who can hit the ball. So maybe there's some hope for the future. Now with that Wells kid, the catcher, he looks good too. Yeah,
the Yankees minor league at every level, they're in first place, and the Tampa Tarpons, they're 40-18, and this kid Jake Sanford batting 346, Trevor Hauver batting 429. They got guys that can hit and pitch. I mean, all up and down their minor league system, they got some players.
Yeah, hopefully they develop. They do a good job of getting these kids, ready to play in the big leagues.
Yeah, and there's I think this guy Josh Bruix. I'm pronouncing his last name wrong, but he plays in High A Hudson. And I think he's a catcher. And in 21 games, he's batting .405 with 9 home runs and 6 doubles. And he was voted High A East Player of the Week. Just looking at their minor league levels, they got guys up and down that can hit and pitch. This pitcher, Glen Otto, in 11 games, got an ERA of 3.17, and he struck out 103 batters in 65 innings for Double-A.
Yeah, they had him in camp this year. I believe he got in some of the regular spring training games.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see some fresh faces when they have call-ups at the end of the year. See what some of these kids look like.
Yeah, another thing, they can only bring up like 3 guys.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they only have the 28-man roster. I mean, which is kind of ridiculous. It's another thing of the greed of the major league owners don't want to. I mean, I don't think you should have 35, 40 guys. You don't have 35, 40 guys in your roster in September, but I think 30, 32 players. I mean, let's give these kids a shot.
Yeah.
3 players is 28 is like nothing.
And the commissioner, Rob Manfred, he said, he wants to do away with the 7-inning doubleheader, starting a runner at second base in extra innings, and also possibly eliminating the shift. Oh, those are 3 things he wants to see gone in the next CBA agreement. And I would love to see the 7-inning doubleheaders gone. I especially would love to see the runner at second to start the extra innings gone. I hate that. And I don't mind, teams playing a shift, but I think if they did away with the extreme shift, it would help the offenses, more. It's put more runs on the board, but it'd be going to be interesting to see if they can come to an agreement. The union, they love to fight. Yeah,
I mean, I think they'll get rid of the 7 innings with the extra innings. The shift, I hope they get rid of. And another thing, when a pitcher has to pitch to 3 hitters, I don't like that either.
I don't. Yeah, I hate that. Yeah, that's another one I do not like. I hope that's something they address too. I mean, yeah. I mean, it basically puts lefty specialists out of business. I mean, you remember guys like Graham Lloyd? He was a left-handed specialist, and it just makes it harder to strategize, for managers.
Yeah, I mean, you got guys like you mentioned, Graham Lloyd, and there was Tony Fawcett, and there was numerous other pitchers. I mean, they played to their mid-40s, and that was what they did. They got lefties out, and now when you have to pitch to three hitters, I mean, I don't think you change anything. There's nothing been wrong with baseball for all these years, and now like the last 4 or 5 years, you're changing all the rules. I can see the 7-inning last year, maybe.
Yeah.
But, I don't even think the younger generation likes that. So,
yeah.
Hopefully these rules will bag it. And, with the DH, we'll see what happens with that. Personally, I like it, but I can understand, people not liking it. So
yeah,
but hopefully they'll come to a decision with that.
And listening to sports radio up here in New York, there's a lot of the older fans just are turned off by the game, and baseball's they're trying their hardest. I think they're trying the hardest to draw in a more younger fan base, but for me, just watching baseball, it looks different, and it certainly feels different from when I was a kid and growing up. I mean, it's changed a lot to me since the '90s. It's just feels different. And if they go on strike, I mean, baseball, it could be worse than the '94 strike. I mean, it took McGuire and Sammy Sosa chasing Babe Ruth's record to bring fans back. I mean, if they have another strike, it could really hurt them.
Well, I mean, one of the things, I go on all the time about it, is people cannot afford to go to the games.
No.
It's more corporate now. And, it's like when you can't make a decision the day of to go to a game for $10 or $15, you just lose interest. It's not that you hate baseball, you just don't feel a part of it. And if you don't feel a part of something, why should you care about it? And it's like you turn on the Yankee games. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. There's nobody in the stands.
No.
In the lower boxes, there's nobody there.
Yeah, I remember back in the '90s, we could hop a train, and if we had no money, we could still get into the bleacher seats for free. The only time they charged you money for the bleacher seats were when it was a huge game or a playoff game. Otherwise the bleachers were free, or you could spend $30 and get a ticket from someone outside. But you're right. Nowadays, I mean, it costs way too much to bring a family of four to a game. You're talking hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, I remember going to the stadium, and you'd spend $5, $7, $8 for an upper deck seat, the last couple rows, and then you'd run all around. You'd spend time in the upper deck, and then you'd go out in the mezzanine, and that was a great seat, the mezzanine. I always used to love to sit there. And then you'd go out to right field, and then you go up to left field, and then you'd sneak down, try to get by the dugout. I mean, it was just a lot of fun. I mean, we look forward to going to the games. But now it's like you can't even afford. I mean, even the friggin' spring training games are ridiculous. It's just like, they're losing the fan. It's even some of these minor league parks, they got to watch their pricing too. It's just, it's a shame.
Yeah, and I get the new Yankee Stadium is beautiful, but it's nothing like the old stadium where you felt like you were right there on the field with the players. This was built like it felt like by businessmen, not it was built more for corporations than for the fans.
Well, I mean, they should have never tore down the old stadium. That was like a worldwide landmark, and to see it destroyed like that, I mean, it's just it was a sin is what it was. I mean, it's just a shame. It's just a shame to see. It's like the Yankee Stadium now is a mall. It's a beautiful mall, but it's still a mall. Yeah,
and I mentioned this on our last show. I mean, just walking in through the tunnel on the third base side, and when you right away you see the right field porch, and it was a wall of seats just going straight up, and it's amazing how short that right field porch is in person. I mean, and you think you could hit a home run easily. It's so close. I mean, it was just a sight to see. I mean, and anywhere you sat, you were looking down on the field. It was just something about that stadium that was special when you walked in it, and it's a shame that they're no longer playing it.
Yeah, well, that's where all the greats played, and you look forward to going. You could make up your mind the last minute and go, and you could see double headers, and you go see batting practice, and then you had fielding practice, and now it's just it's a different thing. I mean, I don't like. It doesn't make me mad the way it is now. I just don't care about it.
Yeah.
They don't care about me, so why should I care about that? Yeah. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Yeah,
I mean it's amazing. Just like I said, listening to people on the radio, a lot of people are turned off, especially the older generation. And you don't hear a lot of calls from younger audience. It's mostly the people that have grown up loving baseball. That's still their main fan base, and a lot of them are getting turned off and frustrated with the game.
Well, I mean, I'll give you for instance, Rob. I mean, one of the main reasons I moved to Tampa is to go see the Yankees. It's spring training, the minor league, and I mean, you could walk over and you could just stand there and watch him practice.
Yeah.
And the minor league camp and even the spring training, and you were right there. I used to take some great pictures, and you could interact with the players, and they, maybe you get an autograph and stuff. But now it's like even in spring training, you're standing behind barriers. They're practicing on fields where you can't even have access to, or they throw bullpens underneath where you can't even see anything. And it's like, the minor league camp, you used to get home run balls. You can't even do that now. So it's like, it sucks is what it does. It's like, it changed so much. And if you remember how it was, I remember how it was when I first came down, and the way it is now, it's like, it's really like going over a waste of time.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's a shame. It really is. I mean, the fans are the most important part of baseball, and the interaction between players and fans, it's like it's less and less every year.
Well, I mean, the thing is, when you used to go to the game and you get home, the first thing you did is go grab a bat and ball, or and you go play baseball with your couple of guys, you play baseball with your friends, or you throw the ball against the wall, or you play wiffle ball or something. And when the kids don't have access to see the big leaguers, or to go to minor league games, they just don't want to play it. Of course, back then to entertain yourself, you had to do something. Now all you have to do is, turn on the computer or turn on the TV, and it's just a different way to do things. And the thing is, now with these youth sports is so like organized, or so-called organized, it's like you don't have pickup games, and the kids really don't know how to play because they don't know how to organize their own games. And it's just it's I mean, I'm an old fart, but it's just sad to see.
Yeah, growing up, me and my cousin, he was a Met fan, I was a Yankee fan, and we go to Yankee game and Met games. But when we used to play stickball all the time, and we would literally mimic the lineup. Like if I was the Yankees, he was the Mets, and I would bat when I was the first batter would be Ricky Henderson, and then I would be in his stance and Willie's stance and then Don Mattingly's stance. I could switch hits, so I mimicked their stances, and he did the same. It was something that we loved to do. And the kids today, you don't see them doing that.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Robert, when I was growing up, they had the organized thing, but I never wanted to join that bullshit because, it was the parents and all the other nonsense. And
yeah.
But I mean, back then, why do you want to go play Little League and get up once or twice a day when you could play in the schoolyard and get up 80, 100 times a day?
Yeah, I one year I was playing organized ball during the summer, and I played left field. I batted .345 that year, but we had a game that we needed to win to get into the playoffs. It was called the Severio League, and our head coach was late, so the assistant coach made out the lineup, and he put his son in left field and put me on the bench. And when the head coach finally arrived, and he looked at me and he said, "What the hell are you doing on the bench?" And I pointed to the assistant coach, and right away he put me in. And I came up in the top of the seventh. We were down by one, and there was a runner on first, and I got out in front of a breaking ball, and the left fielder caught it against the fence. I was literally inches away from hitting a home run, and my head coach was so pissed at the assistant, and he even told me at the game, he's like, "You should have been playing in this game." I mean, but that's the thing. I mean, you got parents, they they might have their kids playing or a friend's kids playing. It's rough. It can be unfair.
Well, I know where I used to live, they had a Little League, and I'd be throwing the ball against the wall or shooting hoops. Which nowadays, if you throw a ball against the wall, you're crazy.
Yeah.
They don't. You hit a tennis ball, you're out of your mind. But Robert, and a lot of these Little League coaches are just nuts. They yell, they yell at their kids. It's like it's insanity. I'd rather manage the Yankees than manage a Little League team because the parents are crazy.
Yeah, the head coach I had, I forget his first name, but his last name was Emily. He played minor league ball for the Phillies for a number of years before he basically washed out. But he was so hard on his son, Warren, and Warren was a great player all through school and high school, and even got a scholarship to somewhere, some college in Carolina. But by the time he got there, he was burnt out from just his father pushing him so hard that he ended up dropping out of college because his father was just so hard on him with baseball.
And I think another thing, Robert, I mean, they only play one sport.
Yeah.
I mean, the football players play football, baseball plays baseball. And I mean, it's like they're very good at their sport, they're proficient at their sport, but they don't play others.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, if you can shoot a basketball, you could probably throw a baseball and hit a tennis ball. But nowadays, they just play one sport and they don't want to do anything else. And it's just, it's just a different world.
Yeah, and wasn't Dave Winfield a basketball player in college?
Well, Winfield got drafted by all three sports.
Yeah.
He got drafted by, I think Dallas drafted him as a tight end. Of course, he played with the Padres, but he played for the University of Minnesota. He was a starting forward on the basketball team.
Yeah, he was a heck of an athlete for a guy his size.
Yeah, Winfield was terrific. I mean, the two guys I seen, it was Winfield and Sheffield. They hit the ball harder than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, they would hit rockets.
Yeah, Sheffield had, that bat. He had that bat speed of his was something else. I mean, he could turn on a ball and it was gone.
I know, Robert. Like you're in Dunedin. I mean, Dunedin, they remodeled ballpark where the Blue Jays play, but I mean, you're right on top of the action. And this is before they had the screens up. And I mean, it's amazing. Like Sheffield didn't kill somebody with the rockets he would hit in the stands. I mean, it was just.
Do you remember Mark Cameron for the Mets? He played for the Mets.
He was.
I went to a Met. Yep, I was at a Met game. I forget how old I was, but we were so close to the third. We were right there in front of third base. And every time the pitcher threw the ball, I can remember ducking because I was scared of a foul ball. And Mark Cameron hit one that whizzed past my nose. And I heard a loud thud. And I looked over, and this woman had her teeth falling out of her mouth. And they wind up having to take her out. But, I mean, you were so close. And those foul balls, man, they come flying at you. And but I remember that Mark Cameron hitting one that was so fast I didn't even have time to react, and it hit a lady.
Robert, I remember one time I went to see the Phillies and the Mets play at Shea, and this is when Greg Luzinski was with the Phillies, the Bull, a big, strong guy, and we got there for batting practice, and Luzinski hit a rocket into the left field, deep left field. And a guy reached down to pick up his beer, and the ball just glanced off the top of his head.
Oh.
And went back like 30 or 40 yards. And he just picked up his beer and he took a sip, and then he was rubbing his head. It wasn't a direct hit. But it caromed off it. It's like it barely hit it. And he just kept drinking his beer. And it was comical. I mean,
yeah.
And then in the first inning, Luzinski hit a home run off Jerry Kuzman. And I remember the Phillies got 5 runs in the first, and the Mets they won the game 6-5. This is when, 78, 79. That's what I remember.
Yeah, I loved going to both the Mets and Yankee games growing up, but Yankee Stadium always was special to me. I've never seen grass that green, and again, that right field porch, a wall of seats. I mean, unbelievable. And I was glad I got to see Don Mattingly's first playoff game. I mean, he was my favorite player growing up when I was. To see him knock in the go-ahead run in the bottom of the 6th, that was great.
I mean, the first time I was at the stadium was August 8th, 1964, was Old Timers Day. Oh. And, I seen Dizzy Dean play and, Ted, I think it was Dizzy Dean, Ted Williams, and I seen DiMaggio play and actually get a hit. To see Tommy Henrik and Hank Bauer and, all the great Yankees. I still have the Daily News, paper and, see the original stadium and see Mickey Mantle hit home runs and see Roger Maris play and Yogi was the manager and see Whitey Ford pitch a shutout. So, Elston Howard. So, it was definitely something I'll never forget. And I remember it to this day, and I don't remember what I did yesterday. So.
Yeah. I tell you, I watched the biography on Elston Howard. I mean, what a story. And, I mean, if he wasn't behind Yogi Berra, I mean, he put up great numbers. But, I mean, the numbers he could have put up if he was a full-time catcher for his entire career, I mean, what a player.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't become the regular catcher. He was 31. When he became the regular Yankee catcher, and he was a terrific player. He was,
and he wasn't originally a catcher, right? When he joined the Yankees, they gave him a catcher's mitt and told him to get used to it, right?
Yeah, he played left field. He played outfield, and he caught when Yogi needed a day off, and but you're right. If he'd have played 154 games at the time. He'd probably be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, if anyone listen, if you ever see a documentary on him, you got to watch it. It was great. And he's a big guy, too.
Yeah, Elston should have been the Yankee manager.
Yeah. I mean, he was the guy. Yeah, he was the guy that got in between Reggie Jackson and Billy Martin, and he was a little bit bigger than Reggie. And Reggie was a big guy. Yeah,
Elston just sort of like just moved in there casually and just
yeah. But yeah, even the players felt Elston should have been the Yankees manager. He was well respected by the Yankee players.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame he died. He died young. I think he was 50, 51. The same with Roger Maris. That was my favorite, but he should have got a chance to manage the Yankees. Yeah.
I mean, the Yankees, they gave him a job in the booth and in the front office. But they should have made him a manager.
Yeah, and he would have been the first black manager, and they couldn't have found a better guy than great character, great player. Just all those black players had to go through a lot, and Elston was a credit to the Yankees.
Yeah, he was the first first African American that the Yankees signed, right?
Yeah, he was the first player. They had a guy, Vic Power, that they wouldn't bring up because, the owners were racist. It was the old boy network back then, and I don't know how much anything's changed, really. But, Elston was, a terrific player. I remember Casey come up to tell you the sign of the times when they got Elston Howard. Casey says, well, we finally got a black player. We got one who can't run.
Jesus.
Yeah. And I language a little more rough than that, but that's
it's crazy. But Elston, he was his knowledge was impeccable, and when he got traded to the Red Sox at the end of his career, weren't the pitchers told by the manager if you shake them off, you get fined?
Well, yeah, Dick Williams was the manager in '67. I remember when Elston got traded to the Red Sox. I still have the clipping from the Daily News, and Dick Williams says if you shake off don't even think of shaking off Elston Howard.
Yeah. Yeah, when he got traded in the documentary, he was planning on retiring. His wife talked him into going and playing with Boston to finish out his career.
Yeah, that's when they had the impossible dream. He's a big part of the Red Sox getting in the World Series. Yastrzemski was incredible that year, but after Elston won the '63 MVP, '64, '65, he hurt his elbow, and he really couldn't hit after that, and he was just never the same player. Defensively, he was still great, but offensively, he went downhill quite a bit.
Yeah. That's like, I wonder, Mantle, they said, was so fast. I forget that there was they clocked him going from home to first. I forget how fast it was. But after he blew out his knee, he was still fast, but Mickey Mantle could flat out run.
Yeah, from what I understand, he could do it all. I remember talking to a scout down here who, as a little boy, was out in Arizona, like with Mickey's first spring training, because the Giants come to St. Pete and the Yankees went out to Arizona. And he was a kid when he was out there, and he said Mickey Mantle used to hit the ball and run. He says you had to see it to believe it. So, I remember Mickey could hardly run when I used to see him play, but he still could hit.
Yeah, I mean, in the book I read about him, they said the noise from his knee popping, they could hear it in the bullpen. That it was so loud when he stepped in the drain and popped his knee.
Yeah, that was the '51 series, and DiMaggio called him off, and Willie Mays actually hit that ball. So, you had three of the greats involved in one play.
Yeah. Wow. Well, how about we do the next time we talk be Monday after the Boston series. The Yankees have off on the 19th after they play 4 at Boston. We'll have a good. At least we'll know what kind of shape they're in heading into the 2 games with Philly. But I'd like to see them take 3 out of 4 from Boston. At worst split. If they can just split, the 8 games and not lose any ground, I'll be happy with that. But they can't afford to lose any more ground these next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, Robert, it's better to talk about the old times and the newer team. But it's always fun to talk to you, and we'll talk on Monday, and hopefully we'll have a good weekend. Yeah,
and like I said, big 2 weeks coming up. I'm hoping for the best, but I'm also preparing for the worst. Things just aren't looking good. I mean, like we were talking earlier, Chapman, and some of the starting pitching spin. Some guys are hitting, some guys aren't. It's going to be interesting to see how the second half starts off.
Yeah, I mean, when you blow 4 or 5 run leads in the ninth inning, it's you're thankful they have an off button on the TV and on the computer because they're tough to. Unfortunately, I didn't see them, but they're devastating losses.
Yeah, I couldn't believe when they lost that game to Houston. I turned it off thinking like, oh, good, they won it, and come to find out later, and I watched the highlights. I just couldn't believe it. I think they put out a stat this year of teams that were leading by, I think it was 3 or 4 runs in the ninth were 54-2, and the 2 losses were both by the Yankees. So that they've blown 2 games this year in the ninth inning with a 4-run lead.
Yeah, and I think they've lost 5 or 6 games in the ninth inning when they had the lead. I remember Justin Wilson gave up a homer against the Tigers, and then there was at least another incident. So I think it's happened like 5 or 6 times. I mean, and if that happens more than 2 or 3 times a season, it's just, you don't win. It's as simple as that. Yeah. That's why you don't win. You don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's like if the Yankees, if they can do good against Boston and Tampa, after that, their schedule gets very easy. They have a good stretch, like I said, against the Marlins, Orioles, the Mariners, and the Royals. I mean, so if they can come out of this next 2 weeks in good shape, they have teams they should be able to beat up on that can, pile up some wins, which is why I'll say it again, the next 2 weeks are very important.
Yeah, it's going to see if, next 2 weeks you'll see if August and September mean anything, or if we're just, going through the motions.
It's always a pleasure, Jack. So Monday the 19th?
Yep, sounds good, Robert. Looking forward to it.
Okay, to all the fans, we'll see you then.
Take care now.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone.